We're here this afternoon with Kylee Walker from the Iowa Girls High School Athletic Union. How you doing today?
Good. Thanks for having me, Troy. I appreciate it.
Well, you've been a busy person.
I have.
I thought maybe we'd do this last week, when everything was real fresh, but you had to go bowling for a week.
Yep.
Um,
We had a couple nights at home and then woke up on Monday and headed up to Waterloo for state bowling. So it's a busy time here at the Girls Union.
yes, it is. And then basketball is in how long?
Basketball is in 2 weeks from Monday. So March 2nd or 3rd, six
So
days
it's
long.
it's
So
wow, it all kind of hits all at the same time, doesn't it?
hmm
Um, so the girls the tournament, the state tournament, I'll say the wrestling state tournament.
hmm
Wow, what an event. What a fantastic event. Are there some highlights that really stand out for you? First time being on this side of it?
hmm it was a really good tournament. We've received a lot of compliments, which is good. I know we worked really hard as a staff to put on a good tournament this year. And I think the biggest thing for me that I keep hearing is that the finals was on television. And I don't think I really realized how big of an impact that was going to have on our sport until after the fact, when you hear from a lot of those people that are, flipping through the TV and they see it and they turn it on and they watch a little bit of wrestling, even if they watch, one match, that's one more than they maybe watched before.
Yep.
And some people that I've talked to have got on the TV and then ended up watching the whole thing. So I really do think overall as a tournament, that was one of the highlights, was being able to showcase our sport, not just for the wrestling community, but across the state, and tapping into some of those people that maybe weren't wrestling fans or are general wrestling fans, and kind of getting to know our sport more.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's such an important thing. I even talked to some of the JUCO coaches this year that got to be on Iowa Public Television and the
Mm-hmm.
impact that that had on their recruiting, on just people knowing that JUCO women's wrestling exists. And so yeah,
Mm-hmm.
that was awesome. That takes me back to the days when I was recording on VHS the Iowa State meets and
Mm-hmm.
rewatching those all year long because I got like
Yeah.
eight and watching the state. I didn't want I usually was down there, but watching state finals or recording them and getting to watch them back, it's kind of a nostalgic thing too.
Mm-hmm.
So not having to be on the arena side of the sport or of the
Yes.
tournament, how was that for you this year?
My body wasn't as physically exhausted as it was in the past, but it was fun because I know that side of things. So I would say that for me, the whole process of the wrestling season, I wouldn't say that the state tournament was easy, but it was simpler for me than like the whole regional process, because I knew what went into it and I knew all the details. I could tell you how many sections of mat were out there, all those little things
Uh-huh.
from my old job that helped me in so many ways when it came to the state tournament this year. And we have such a good relationship with Extreme Arena and the Sports Commission over there that they make it so easy for us to come in and run a great tournament. So it was a different experience. It was a fun experience. It kind of brought me back to what it was like being the tournament director for Donnybrook and some of those other tournaments that we ran when I was over at the Sports Commission, which is what I like to do. The fun
Yeah.
things. So.
So let's just go through some of the things that stood out to me. I
Mhm.
arrived that evening and I walked back to talk to you and Aaron and talk to Louis too. And you guys were running the clinic
hmm
for the youth.
Yeah.
Explain I mean, I know you do that for other sports, but just
hmm
talk about the clinic just real
Yeah.
briefly.
So the Future Champions Clinic started a few years ago, I believe, with basketball is the first one, and it's actually sponsored by our Iowa Girl Foundation, which is something that started in 2024 as a way for us to continue to support Iowa girls, but not just state champions or the ones that make it to the state tournament. So it really is an opportunity for sixth through eighth graders to come into the facility, the tournament venue, and get to experience what those high school girls get to experience. It's a really special thing. And it's for us that it's already set up. The space is already there. We're already paying for the space. All these things are already set in place. So it was an easy addition to our state tournament. This year we had high school coaches come in do the stations, which I think was really fun too because they all brought a couple other athletes with them, and as a former athlete, I know what it's like to look up to someone. And so I think it's a really special night. Someone told us that we did a really good job this year of honoring the past wrestlers that kind of trailblazed the new wrestlers, the young ones, the current ones. We touched a lot of different groups in the wrestling community, which I think is really important because it is so new. And all of those IWCOA past champions that we honor before the finals, really, we wouldn't be here if it wasn't for them. So I think all those things kind of play into the Future Champions Clinic. One of our favorite parts of that is we take a break in the middle and we have cards that they fill out, and each one has a different question on it. What does wrestling mean to you? What's it mean to be an Iowa girl? Who do you look up to? And then we had those put on the hallway, the locker room hallway. So as those state qualifiers come in the next morning, they can read all those things and kind of motivate them. If they need a little boost, I'm sure they don't, but just something to look at that reminds them of what they're doing it for. So we really enjoy it. I think the girls enjoy it. The parents enjoy getting to sit there. I know I talked to a mom this year that said her daughter started wrestling and she doesn't know a lot about it, so she's excited herself to sit there and learn. So I think it's a really good thing that we've got going on. We do it for basketball and volleyball as well.
Yeah, no, it was pretty cool to watch, and bringing in those high school coaches, I think that's really good idea too, and having
Mm-hmm.
the girls there to do it. Yeah, I absolutely love that idea. Sessions, things went very smooth this year, and I
Mm-hmm.
don't think we had the congestion as we have in the past. Um, I guess maybe explain that and
Yeah.
yeah, just how that all came about, and if what you think for the future of that.
Mm-hmm. So the biggest change that we had this year was we split that Friday morning session. And by splitting that into two separate class for their respective classes, it basically split up that Friday morning chaos session. In the past few years, that session has sold out. It's been very overwhelming. There's been, you have a lot of girls in there, you've got a lot of coaches, everyone's weighing in at the same time. It was just a lot going on. So by splitting that up, it really allowed for one, more fans to come in, but I think a better experience too for the athletes and coaches. You have separate weigh-ins again. You have a little bit more warm-up space in the back. And then you have a little bit of a break there between everything. I know we ran into wait time this year, and so we put the 8 mats out. We didn't want to run into issues and get pushed back. Being on TV this year is really
Yep.
important that we did not run into time issues. But now that we have data from this year, it'll be nice for us to run back and run simulations on different situations and times. How many mats do we want to put out there? What's that look like? But I think that really did enhance the overall experience this year, and it's something that it's moving us in the right direction. We'll always look at it and go through it with a fine tooth comb, making sure that we're doing everything 100%. But that was the biggest change this year. We only sold out the final session, which 75% of those tickets were purchased before the tournament even began, which really means that, a lot of those people knew that they could possibly have someone in the finals, so they purchased those tickets. And only 83% of tickets were actually scanned in. So with that being said, I know there's some room still for us to work with, and we'll just figure out the best way moving forward, what that looks like.
Very nice. Finals. Wow. What a show.
Mm-hmm.
That was pretty cool. That I again I told you earlier I was a little skeptical because I really liked having the third and fourth, fifth and sixth, but I'll have to eat crow on that one. That was really good
Mm-hmm.
to highlight those. Just a great show. What's some things that stood out in the finals for you?
I think overall there was a lot of things that happened that wouldn't have happened 4 years ago, and I think that just shows you how far our sport has grown. And I think there's a lot of amazing things and a lot of amazing athletes and coaches that make it to that. You have 56 girls that deserve that spotlight, and I think
Yep.
being able to give them that spotlight really shows where our sport's gone and what it's gotten to. It was it was really fun. It was a really fun, the worst part of sports and the best part of sports were shown in that night, and it really gave our sport a lot of credibility, I think.
Oh yeah, there was some huge upsets, but then
Hmm.
that's part of the sport. That's what
Hmm.
makes wrestling wrestling.
Right.
I've been interviewing a lot of high school girls this week, and
Hmm.
it was actually Jamie Crawl. I don't know if you
Hmm.
got a chance to talk
Yep.
to her. Just a funny girl, and I'm
Hmm.
sure this comes from Dustin, but he said seeds are for birds,
Hmm.
and he was so right. I haven't
Hmm.
done it. I think it'll be mind numbing. Again, you said the same thing with statistics. You get started on them, and it takes a while, so we don't have as
Hmm.
many stats as we'll have later on.
Hmm.
But I would love to see statistically ranked versus seeded versus placing and see actually how
Right.
that comes out.
Hmm.
I'll again, that's very mind numbing, and I'll
Yeah.
I'll
A
have to
lot of
do
work.
that sometime,
Yeah.
sometime when I got nothing better to do. Um, as far, yeah, tournament, great. Some things maybe that you're personally like got some ideas floating in the back of your head. Obviously, these got to go through everybody, so it's just,
Hmm.
but we all have ideas. Anything that you could see that would stand out that you're like, I'd like to see that change.
Um, I don't know if there's any, I know there's been a lot of discussion about a lot of little things. I think overall with the tournament, the biggest thing on my mind right now is figuring out what dual team looks like, and really focusing in on that. We announced last Monday that we were going to Extreme Arena for that, which we're really, really excited about. Again, the Sports Commission, Extreme Arena, they do a wonderful job. And there really is no better place to host a wrestling tournament in a community that wants you there and wants the athletes and the coaches and the fans there. So we're going to spend some time here once basketball's over, really digging through what we want that to look like and making sure that that tournament is the way that it should be, and just providing more opportunities in a different way for our sport.
Very nice. And so, yeah, the location for I'll skip ahead on my
Hmm.
stuff. But that's all right. Location, obviously, Iowa City, great location. That area is so good for wrestling. The the venue is good for wrestling
Hmm.
because it's big enough but yet small enough. I guess
Hmm.
if that makes sense.
Yes.
Um, do you know what are the dates? I should know that, but I
It's January 22nd, so the Friday before individuals regionals is the state dual tournament. And
okay.
right now we had that Monday the 18th. That's actually MLK Day. We're gonna have that as the qualifier. We might still have that because after talking with a lot of coaches and athletic directors, they still have activities on MLK Day, and it really
Hmm.
seems to only affect probably a smaller majority of schools than we maybe initially thought. So we're working through that, making sure that that date, again, we have to go through the unified calendar and make sure all those things are aligned. But right now, those are the tentative dates that are out there. And I will change that, update that stuff on our website here in the next month or so.
Yeah. I know it's probably a ways away and you guys are probably still determining how are we going to determine the teams? Do you know yet? Is that
I don't. That's part of our discussions and what we, I guess, what we want that to look like, and comparing it to a lot of our other sports here that we have in the office and what that setup kind of looks like, I guess. But
yeah,
yeah,
because it'd
there's
be
a
really
lot of work to be had in that space.
yeah, that's it's a hard thing to do because there's a big difference between tournament team and dual team,
Right.
and yeah, it's that's a difficult one. And
Hmm.
yeah, I didn't no idea if I know at one time, probably 2 years ago when we were talking, we had talked about regional champions and doing it after like the boys used to do,
Hmm.
but that doesn't always work out well either.
Yeah.
So I was just curious if you had any ideas on that yet. Um, let's go backwards into our we already talked about attendance. About 83% showed up. So we still have 83% of that. We still have room to grow on
Hmm.
finals night. There
We
is
sure
room.
do.
So
Hmm.
and it's loud and it's stuff. Anything that we could do to I don't know. I dispel that every time I hear we need to go to downtown Des Moines and what is
Hmm.
it, KC Center now. I think that'd be the worst decision ever. And actually, I had a comment from somebody from Pennsylvania, I believe it was, that they had switched their tournament out of a smaller arena into the larger arena, and he said it's horrible.
Hmm.
There's just there's no atmosphere to it. What would it take? I mean, what kind of we'd have to what would it take to be big enough to go down to Casey Center?
I don't know. And Casey Center and Catch Des Moines, they do a wonderful job too of hosting our tournaments. It's something that we would have to definitely discuss if we are ready for that change. I know I always think about it. Would you want to be sold out in a smaller arena with the atmosphere like what we had, or would you like to be in a bigger space where it doesn't feel like that? You can feel that. And does it, I don't know, you have to ask yourself the question, is it better for the sport? Is it better for the athletes? Or is it, what kind of step are we taking with that? I definitely think it's something that we always continue. We definitely acknowledge because we definitely get a lot of comments that we're selling out, we're selling out, we're selling out. And I think this year we moved in the right direction by splitting that session up. in the morning on Friday. That really helped with only having to sell out. And really, we only sold out maybe an hour or two before the final session. If we were selling out, before the tournament even started, maybe that discussion would need to be had a little bit sooner than on our minds right now. But I think with it selling out as close to the final session as we did, that still gives us some time to. And I always said too, I'm like, it's funny because the first year of wrestling, Dan Gable was there and he told me, he said, we're really going to have an issue when we start selling out the final session. Cause that was when we had one class, 3 mats out there. And
Yep.
I said, yeah. And he's like, I don't know how far away that is. And I'm like, I don't know either. What do you know? A year or two later, we're doing that. So things can change quickly. Our numbers overall this year, last year we had 3,400 athletes do body comp assessments at the beginning of the
Yep.
season. This year we had 3,600. So the numbers aren't growing as big as they're still growing. They definitely are
Yeah.
still growing. But I always wonder, are you not getting those athletes anymore that said, oh, this wasn't something that was offered, so I'm going to jump in and try it now? Or are you getting those athletes? And you can tell by the competitiveness of our athletes that they're competing throughout their whole life. So I don't know. It's definitely a question that's always in the back of our mind. If we need to move, when we need to move. I know the arena over there, they always joke I mean, you can always put seats on the floor. There's a lot of things that we can
Yep.
always do before we get to that point. But
So you talked about numbers, the 34 to 36, so 200 more. And you might not have done the math yet. Did that correlate to more at regionals?
just a little bit. It correlated about 200 more. We had just over 1,900 at regionals, so that we
Okay.
look at that as your varsity athletes. So that kind of tells you the junior high athletes as well. And yes, last year was just around 1,700, so that number
Okay.
correlates with additional 200 this year, which is a good number to see. And knowing that our numbers are correlating, because again, someone could take the body comp assessment and then the next day realize that they don't want to compete. So
Oh, it
um,
happens a lot. I had
all the time.
probably 7 or 8 girls on our team that body comp that maybe only wrestled the first couple of weeks.
Yeah,
So
for sure.
those numbers, I was wondering how regionals grew,
Yes.
and obviously they did grow.
Hmm.
Um, some changes this year at regionals. We went to 80 teams in 2A and what the rest in 1A.
Hmm.
But it worked out fairly close.
Hmm.
What's your thoughts? Are we kind of in the right spot, you think, or at least going forward for this
Yeah.
year? Okay.
I think we're in the right spot. I know there was some people ran some numbers for me and did some math on like how many, gosh, I got to think about it. I've looked at so many numbers the
I,
past few days.
I have a spreadsheet. If you need,
Yes.
tell me what numbers you want, and I got them for you.
They were telling me the numbers of qualifiers and then where those qualifiers placed at
Oh,
state.
you have that.
Yeah, someone's working on it for us. I've got all sorts of numbers coming in,
I'm
and
sure.
it's great. I love it
Yep.
because it's fun to look at. But I think we're moving in the right direction. Aaron and I spent a lot of time on it this last year, um, and I don't foresee any changes this year as far as the number of qualifiers that we take, how many how many schools are in each class. I think 3 classes would be really, really difficult.
Yep.
I don't again, that's something that we're looking at as an organization and across the board for all of our sports. Swimming wants another class, tennis wants another class, soccer wants another class. So it's something that competitively, how does that look? And does it help or does it hurt the sport? So I don't know if that's something that, and again, there'll be more discussion with the advisory committee meeting in March and with our board after that. And if there are some changes, but I don't foresee a ton of issues. I think the from a regionals point of a few changes, little things like maybe doing 3 mats at 1A sites instead of 4 mats.
Yep.
There's some notes like that we have that, they ran into wait times 30 minutes in. So just little things like that I think we can continue to do to just overall enhance the experience that changes as our sport gets more competitive too.
Yeah, I think
So,
if we looked at a third class, man, I just because I have it sitting right in front of me, average team size in 2A at all regions, average 10.6 and did that same math for 1A, and it was just over 6.
Hmm.
So you take the bottom, whatever, 64, 80 teams, and you might have team sizes of 4 and 5, and which
Right.
would be very difficult to have a
Hmm.
regional. So yeah, I
Right.
don't think we're quite there. That's
No.
and we might as well throw the elephant in the room is always going to be uh, until things get split up, co-ops. And
Hmm.
we talked prior, and you got some very good points on it.
Hmm.
You want to just
Yeah. I think the biggest thing, again, I was telling Troy this earlier, that we have so many comments about co-ops, and it's something as a wrestling community that we need to remember that co-ops are for all of our sports. So when we get the comments like, oh, we need to take away co-ops, co-ops shouldn't exist, well, we actually have 74 co-ops, and some of those are one school with another school. So by taking away co-ops, we're really taking away opportunities for that one girl. I get calls all the time saying, oh, I have a I don't know, 155-pound girl, and she doesn't have anywhere to compete. Well, here I can give you all the schools around you that have programs, and you can do a co-op with them. We
yeah,
get that question a lot. And it's something, again, it's across the board for all of our sports. If we took away co-ops, we would take away swimming. How many schools across the state of Iowa have a pool? It really comes down to facilities, it comes down to staffing, it comes down to a lot of things. And I heard someone say it at wrestling. They said it only is an issue when that co-op's successful, right? And it is a hard pill to swallow, I think, for some people to understand that it really goes a lot far beyond the success of a program at that time. And it's just something that we are always going to face and we're always going to have, and people will always be reaching out about the super teams and this or that. But it's the same thing with the private non-private school conversation. It's
yeah.
only an issue when a team is successful. So it's just something for us to consider, remind ourselves that it goes much farther, I think, than the sport of wrestling. And if you go look at the statistics of the girls that won state this year and the schools the district that they actually live in, would they have that opportunity if that co-op
Yeah.
wasn't there? So just something for everyone, I think, for us to consider as we hear some of those comments or changes that people would like to see. And again, we answer every email that we get regarding some of the co-ops because we know that that's a concern, for a lot of school districts too, and a conversation that changes year over year. We were talking about it earlier. Every year looks different for every school district. So.
Yeah, I mean I can address that too because I have a co-op and it's a fairly large co-op for our area.
Hmm.
Maybe not large scale, in the state, but for our area. But those things are starting to have different conversations, and we're starting to look at some different things. And that usually happens when someone's child is not getting an opportunity, and
Hmm.
then someone starts to talk to their school, and that's usually how things get switched around. Because coaches and a lot of times, like you even said, ADs don't necessarily have a lot of say in these things. This is usually school board and
Hmm.
superintendent type thing. And if they're not
Right.
bothered by it, it's not going to change.
Right.
So yeah. And so yeah,
100%.
I'm seeing that. We're having discussions just because of other reasons in our school district and stuff. So I know that those happen as it's mostly parent driven.
Hmm.
It's not school driven, you
Right.
know.
And honestly, with our sport, it depends sometimes on the weight class. Like,
Yeah.
is that school co-oping or not? And like we would get some, after the fact. Um, you know, the biggest thing too this year is the House File 189 that changed a lot of things. We don't just take the host school, we take the largest school and then we multiply everyone else by 0.25. So that changed classifications overall. And wrestling probably saw that change a little bit more than everything else. But again, that's something that's out of our control. So
Yeah.
there's just some things that are in our control, some things that are out of our control, and some things that are across the board for all sports in our state, including boys sports. There's a ton of co-ops in football as well. And that's just something we can't just take away with the snap of a finger. So.
Yeah. You mentioned earlier you don't foresee us going to a 3 qualifier.
Hmm.
As many of us coaches that would love to see that. I don't disagree with it at this point in time.
Hmm.
Uh, just because yeah, I just don't. I would like to see it honestly, and that's more probably personal because that day breaks your heart
Hmm.
for a lot of kids.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, that's one of those that I'm sure that'll come up at the advisory meeting, and I'm sure
Hmm.
that definitely will. Um, and overall direction of girls wrestling. Where do you think we're going?
I think we're moving in the right direction, which is great. I think we always have been. And again, like going back to the finals, I just think there were so many good things that came out of that. Um, it was the best and the worst of our sport, and I really do. It put us on the map for a lot of people. A lot of
Hmm.
people sent me things after the finals that I would have never expected. For them to reach out or to even that wrestling is even on their mind or even something that's being talked about. So I think just with the credibility of that, there there's so much growth whether than and you can look at the numbers and say that there isn't a lot of growth, jumping 200 additional athletes this year that took body comp assessments. Maybe that doesn't look like what it used to, but the growth of the competitiveness, I think, is a big part of what we are seeing, and maybe we'll start to see more as the growth and in saying that, okay, that's the way we're growing, maybe not numbers, but how competitive we are is growing. And it's really fun to see. It makes it exciting for everyone involved. And some of the things that happened this year, you wouldn't have seen that 4 years
No,
ago,
no,
and you
for
see
sure
that
not.
in some of our other sports too. You see some of those upsets, and it's like, okay, that's happening in our sport now, so it's exciting. I think the way that we're moving, and I think continuing to grow. I think the dual team tournament will be fun too. I think that'll just provide again more opportunities for girls to get that experience, to get the state championship experience, to get the postseason wrestling type or whatever you want to call it
Yeah.
experience. So I think it's exciting. I think we're moving in the right direction for sure.
Yeah. Well, and when we talk about overall numbers,
Hmm.
I could be wrong, but if I remember right, just a couple of years ago, we were behind California, Texas, and Washington State for total numbers.
Ooh, I would
If I
have to
remember
look.
right,
USA, yeah,
I
USA Wrestling
it,
runs all those numbers, and it's a very
yeah,
wonderful document because it has it all on there. Yeah.
we may be fifth, fourth, fifth,
Hmm.
somewhere in there.
Hmm.
I will never use those next two numbers because you know why.
Hmm.
But fourth, fourth or fifth in the country with the population of Iowa is, what do we have? 3 million people in the state. They have 3 million
Right.
people in some of their cities.
Hmm.
So just the numbers for Iowa kids that are competing. Where does wrestling fall? Maybe you don't know right off the top of your head in like sports for the girls union as far as
Um,
population.
yeah, I would say we were actually just talking about this morning. We kind of tier our sports by size. I
Hmm.
would say wrestling is at the bottom. So tier ones are softball, volleyball, basketball,
Yep.
massive sports, right? And then below that, I think you would consider like track and field, cross country, soccer. And I would say wrestling's at the bottom of that. Wrestling's a little bit bigger than tennis, swimming, and bowling, I would say. So it's kind of in between
Hmm.
um, our smaller sports and then our medium-sized sports. Um, which is a good spot for it. I think it's
Yeah.
it's kind of on its own because the championship is in such a large space in a venue like that. Um, it's kind of in the middle there of those sizes. It's very far away from some of our big sports, so I will say. And
Oh,
on
yeah.
sheer numbers, when I look at what basketball is doing as far as numbers and regionals and everything, I'm just like, oh my gosh, I can't even imagine how. Which I mean, no state really has that number for wrestling, so but just something that you think about in your head.
Yeah, no, it's crazy. Like even just I know from AAU side of the sports, AAU volleyball is insanely huge. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
the the number of people that go through like we used to be at the Orange County Convention Center for wrestling, and now we got kicked out because volleyball brought in
Mm-hmm.
I can't remember the number. It's like 40,000 teams in the 1 month.
It is so crazy to me
It's
that even the last few years, I was a club volleyball player, so I was in that world. Volleyball is like you would think that basketball, with just the popularity of the sport within the last 5 years, is growing. And I mean, volleyball is like taking over the world. I don't know, it
yeah.
just surprises me. And I mean, it surprises all of us. We have a task force on the declining numbers of basketball and addressing that and where does that come from, And club volleyball is definitely a factor in that for sure. But it's
For
crazy
sure, that's a fact. It's a
how
factor in all winter sports. It
yeah,
is.
for
You
sure.
know, they thought it was wrestling doesn't take your basketball players very often.
No, they thought it did for a little bit, but you can definitely tell that it doesn't. But
Yeah,
it's
and
another
if
thing to the growth of wrestling. It's fun. Aaron and I were talking about this. The first few years, it was like, okay, you're getting athletes on the mat, you know. Now you're getting wrestlers, and you can tell the
yep,
wrestlers, you know, like it's kind of fun to see that growth too. So,
yeah,
but
it is really cool to watch that. Every year or every podcast I do, I don't always focus just on wrestling because that's not always fun because not everybody wants to hear about that.
hmm
Uh, we're in Coralville. We're in the little Wrestle Town area there.
hmm
What's the best place to eat?
Oh, so our staff goes over quite a bit for meetings for volleyball, wrestling, tennis, swimming, and we always eat at 30 Hop. That's like our go-to spot for our staff.
For
I
sure.
personally, because I worked over there, I love going to Tribute, which now I think in Ankeny has a Tribute and a 30 Hop. So those are great. After hours, Iowa Athletic Club is great.
Yeah.
I mean, all three of those are really good. Marquis has really good pizza. I don't know the whole. I love the Iowa River Landing. Someone once told us that it was an Olympic village. It's its own Olympic
Yes.
village, which it
Yeah.
really is, which makes it fun. But if I had to pick a favorite, I would probably have to pick Tribute, my
Okay.
favorite place.
Have you had the ramen? It used to
I
be where Fuzzy's
haven't.
Tacos was.
I
Oh my God.
haven't. I heard it's really
At,
good.
yeah, you need to go have ramen at, I can't even remember what it's called, but go have ramen there.
Um, it starts with an R. Gosh, I can't think of what it's called either. I've heard it's really good.
And then down towards the end by Hyatt, I don't know my
Back
directions.
Pocket,
There's a sushi place.
Kanomi. That is so
Yes.
good.
Yeah.
Kanomi
Every
is so
year
good.
we the coaches and I polished off 10 rolls this year. So
Oh yeah.
yeah.
My fiance is from Iowa City. Kanomi is a staple for us when we go back. It was a staple when we were there. I think no, oh, what's it called? I'll have to text you the name of the roll. That's really good. It's like
Okay.
one of their chef's rolls. It's good. But
I usually just walk in and say, "Hey, I like raw. This, a few people want, not
hmm
pick us out X number of rolls, and they do a great job and stuff.
yeah,
So we had a good time there.
I love it.
Um, I'm gonna get in. These are new questions for me, so I'm gonna go ahead and look back here. When you look back on the season, what are you hopeful that the wrestling community is going to take away from this entire the season as a whole?
Mm. Ooh. Um, Personally, I hope there's some trust in me after this season. That was my big goal this year. I really tried to get out there, spend a lot of time on it, and do a good job. So I hope there's some trust personally for me going into the next season, in a space where coaches feel like they can come share their concerns, their highlights, the good things, the bad things, all of it. So I hope in terms of the wrestling community that, but I also hope that the wrestling community sees that we are continuing to make changes every year to continue to grow it in different ways. The big change again being this year, putting the finals on television. That was a really, really good thing. And that we are going to continue to do those things to put on the best experience, the best state tournament for our coaches, our athletes, our fans, everyone. So just because we had a good year doesn't mean we're done, right?
Yep.
So that we just continue to grow and get better year over year. So,
Yeah, that's one thing I do tell people, because I'm out and I get asked a lot of questions and a lot of things like I know, like I don't know, but
hmm
I do know a couple things. It's always evolving process. It's data
hmm
driven, and
hmm
it's again never done. So those are
hmm
things I do know. So I usually tell them those things that if
hmm
you got data, give them the data because they'll look at it because that's where
yeah,
that's where decisions are made at that organization. It's not
hmm
it's not it's not this I feel.
right,
I've
right.
said that in those advisory meetings and I feel this and then you don't get very far with I feel. I
hmm
want
I know
Aaron
we
wants results. I wants numbers. Tell me
for
why.
sure. Yes,
And
we
so
need the
that's
data and the surveys and all the things that provide us with answers there. You just have to find them in the data. So,
So what would you feel the story from the tournament is?
Oof. Oh, geez. I don't know. Um, Someone did tell us, and I think I mentioned this earlier, that this tournament represented the past, the present, and the future. And I really do think that this year we achieved that. We honored the past IWCOA champions, which was really fun. We honored the current athletes, which was really fun. And then we got to honor the future champions, which was also
Yeah.
really fun. And I think continuing to do that is how we have people buy into the sport. And I received a lot of emails saying how great it was that we honored the IWCOA past champions and that it's something that we can continue to do to grow the sport. The reason it took us so long to do it was the first time that there wasn't any competing, in the finals.
Yeah, you're right.
So it was something that we had to wait to do, but it felt special. And honestly, I didn't really get to stand in there because I was in the back getting the Parade of
Yep.
Champions ready. But I heard the standing ovation was amazing for them. And I do think overall as a tournament, continuing, it's not always just about wrestling, and you can see that in all the past, the present, and the future. So um, the worst and the best of wrestling. So
Yep.
those are my two stories.
And you might have just given me my tagline. Would you say the best and worst of the sport or best and
Mm-hmm.
worst of the wrestling would be the tagline? Because that's been my that's a tough question to ask. I've been asking high school girls to tell me the tagline for their wrestling journey,
Mm-hmm.
and it's a tough question. But I think
Mm-hmm.
I got to write it down so I don't forget because I am to the age where I forget stuff.
Yeah, it was definitely the you saw it all this year, I think, at the state tournament. You saw the heartbreak, you saw the excitement, you saw the we're still being talked about in the news type information, and um, you kind of saw it all.
Oh yeah,
Everything, everything.
it's incredible how much we've gotten the
Hmm.
sport has gotten publicity from.
Hmm.
I sometimes wonder how envious surrounding states of us are, and
I
I'm sure
know.
they are because they'll be they'll be on that corner two or three mats in the boys tournament where we
Hmm.
have this amazing product. Um, Last two things. When you look at Iowa girls wrestling, what do you think it means to wrestle like a girl now?
Ooh, I think it means um, perseverance. That's my word. I
It's a good
think
word.
I think that word represents the past, present, and the future of girls
There you go.
wrestling. So,
I like
yeah.
it. And then final thoughts. Mine are just so you know, when you said you hope that people gain some trust and stuff in you. Uh, I heard throughout the year, my questions are getting answered
Hmm.
and you were out there and everybody saw you. So I think that definitely happened. I appreciated, anytime I asked a question, I got an answer back like that day. And
Hmm.
and and we I know you well, but I know you're busy too. So I know
Right.
that. So,
Uh-huh.
having that open line of communication. Now, well, it wasn't just with me. That was with all coaches. So
Yeah.
that was
That
definitely
was my
cool.
goal. That was my
Yes.
goal.
Got any final thoughts for the day?
I don't think so. I appreciate you bringing me on and talking. I know it does a lot of good things too for me. I think going back to the communication with coaches, it's just another way to get in front of our community and continue talking about it. I think what you're doing is great. I mean, I'm following all the time and I see things pop up, new things that I'm learning all the time through the stuff that you're posting. And I think it's so fun and it really does a lot of good. There's people again that are coming out of the woodworks talking about things that they saw in your podcast or that they saw here that I'm like, I had no idea that these people even knew what was going on in our small wrestling community. It's small, but
Yep.
it's not, and it's
Yeah.
continuing to grow. So I appreciate everything that you do for the girls union, and just the sport of wrestling in general. It really was a fun year, and it'll be here again before we know it.
Oh, I know it. It's crazy. It is crazy how fast I can come around, and it gets faster as you get older.
Mm-hmm.
Definitely believe
I'm
me.
sure it does. I'm sure it
It
does.
does. It does. So, well, thank you very much. I will talk to you very soon.
Thanks, Troy.
Yeah.